and welcome to the Special Needs Sibling Podcast, where we talk about what life is really like as a sibling to someone with special needs. I'm your host, Charlene, and today our guest is Doireann. Did I get that
Hi,
right?
that was
Yay! Okay.
perfect.
Nice. Okay, that's I'm glad we got that. And so I found Doireann. I found you on Instagram, because your account is a safe space for sibs. Did I get that right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a space for me, and it's kind of started as an information account for siblings, but has kind of evolved to be more family focused and kind of research focused too.
Yeah, and so that's how I found you, and so I messaged you, and here we are, recording a
Yeah,
podcast episode.
yeah,
So it's fun. Like we got to chat like off the record and stuff. So which is always just I always just like meeting sibs just for fun because it's very like it helps you feel validated and just like that you have space in the world and people who like understand your feelings and stuff. So I appreciate you
yeah,
coming on the podcast and also like being recorded also. So I appreciate that a lot.
yeah. No, totally. I agree with everything.
Yeah. So I guess we'll hop right into it. So if you could lay out your family structure, like how many siblings you have, how like the age difference between your sibling and what their disability is.
Yeah, for sure. So I have one older brother, and he is 3 years older than me. I have no younger siblings, so it's just the two of us. And we grew up in like a small, me and my brother, my mom, and my dad, pretty small family. And my brother is autistic.
Cool. Yeah, it's just me and my sister too. So I definitely understand there's just the four of you and you kind of
Four
like
member family. Yeah.
yeah.
It feels
um
small but big sometimes.
yeah, that's what's crazy. Like I was talking to someone yesterday where he was asking me about like what I did growing up and I was like I didn't do a lot, but I didn't want to get into like, oh, my sister like has autism and the whole thing. So I was like,
Yeah.
how do I talk about this? And
Yeah.
so he goes, oh, were your parents strict? And I was like, yeah, let's go with that, right? Because I was like, it was just easier to just go with that than to like go through all the stuff. Yeah,
Yeah. 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 I get
yeah.
you.
um, and then in terms of well, autism is kind of a large uh spectrum, but like there's lots of diversity in people
Yes.
who have autism. So are there any particular like traits or fun facts about your brother? Because I know for my sister, she's on the lower end of the spectrum, so she's not as
Right.
high functioning. Um, yeah. So about your brother.
Yeah. Oh, I think like what's so interesting about my brother is that I feel at different times in his life there's been different traits that he's been have been like gifted to him in some ways, but also that
Mm.
he's been kind of struggling with too. Um, so he was diagnosed kind of later when he was 6 or 7, and it was at a time when they didn't particularly understand autism that much. So they were trying to
Mm.
figure out, what his diagnosis was. Um, I was 3 at the time, so kind of blissfully unaware about what was going on.
Yeah.
Um, and he is verbal. He's very charming. He's got lots of really cool and interesting special interests.
Oh,
So he's
that's
really,
fun.
yeah, it is. It's really fun, and it's helpful when they're really interesting because then I love talking to him about them. But yeah, he's always been really interested in geography and different countries and movies, old movie stars. Um, but he has a lot of challenges. He's got a lot of sensory challenges. And he
Mm-hmm.
had, when we were growing up, a lot of real challenges with transitions, um, new environments,
Mm-hmm.
understanding when he could have something or when he couldn't have something, when something would be available for him. And then lots of like self regulation challenges too.
Mm-hmm.
So those have kind of been kind of what I've experienced with him growing up as his sibling. And they have gotten easier for him as he's grown. Like
Yeah.
now he's, over 40, so he's a lot transitions are easier for him, but I also think that that's probably because we understand how we can present transitions to him now and how we can
Mhm.
talk to him through stuff. And back when we were kids, and when my parents were dealing with autism, there wasn't really that information or that research. So it was kind of like a lot of trial and
Oh,
error.
yeah.
Yeah, which can
Yeah,
go
cause
really wrong, right?
yeah, but it's so hard too, cause they're just winging it, cause 'cause they're like, "What if we
Yeah.
tried this?" And then it could
That's
be
exactly it. It's
like
like it's a lot of winging it. It's like, "Let's go to this supermarket on a Sunday that's really busy, but, we've heard really good things about it." And it's like, "Oh, that
yeah,
didn't go well."
that's
Yeah.
funny because it makes me think about, like, yeah, when we would take my sister to the mall, and it was this thing where, like, we would only go to certain malls or certain times, or, like, we would only walk on in certain sections of it to
Yes.
avoid things, but
Yeah.
at the time, I, like, never like, it's weird, like, I didn't connect those things together, but, like, now that you're
Yeah.
mentioning, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, like, that was my parent." Yeah, because even when my sister got diagnosed, so she was 3, but even at that time, like, which was after your brother was diagnosed, right? So, but even
Mhm.
in that time, like, I think there was more information, but I don't think about necessarily like, yeah, like like the regulating and kind of like how to foster the information and like how to care for them. It was more
Oh, for
about
sure,
kind of
yeah.
what autism was as a
Yeah.
general like idea and
Yes, yeah.
things.
Well,
Yeah.
something that's been really, exciting for me is, so I'm originally from Ireland, and right now there's this great group in Ireland that are um, kind of, they're made up of a bunch of neurodiverse people, and they're advocating for changes to these kind of environments. So they're advocating for like quiet hours in supermarkets and sensory friendly cinema,
Oh,
and
that's
like getting
cool.
communication boards and playgrounds. And because really, I feel like that's a huge part of it. It's just like our environments are not set up for neurodiversity. And so,
Yeah.
and if we can, support that modification, then I think things, obviously there's still a lot of challenges, but
Yes.
things should be easier.
Yeah, and it just makes it more accessible is not the word. Approachable. There we go.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
because it's kind of it reminds me of this. I don't so in the US, what a lot of people that I've been noticing, and by people I just mean like, larger organizations. So what they're doing is in playgrounds and even like at the airports, they install these art installations that are like interactive. And so, they have like this, it's like a bird with wings, but there's like little xylophone keys inside the wing. So you can like get the little mallet and then like play music on this bird. But if when you look
wow,
at it, it's just a bird, like you wouldn't think that it's interactive. And so I've noticed that that is in existence at a lot of parks now, where they're just like, they have like these things you play on, but you can also like hit them to like make music. And so I'm wondering, like, oh, like it's just you're creating a place where you want to walk there, and then you end up finding all these little kind of like trinkets. So I think like
yeah,
as we like all over the world, if we start like kind of having more like interactive things like that, then it creates an environment where like, oh, it's not just you're including people, you're actually just educating people because they're like, oh, look, that looks cool, and you just want to go up to it like naturally, because you're like, oh,
totally.
it just looks cool, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I think, like, I'm always so cautious that I don't want to speak on behalf of my brother's experience,
Mm-hmm.
but definitely from my experience, having, environments that are challenging for my brother, also made it challenging for me as a child too, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
it it does help the family, just all members of the family to create these neurodiverse friendly, autistic friendly environments and set that. And it's these like small modifications that can really make a big difference.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then even like what you mentioned earlier about your brother self-regulating, that's something that like I look back at my sister, I'm like, "Oh, like that explains a lot." Not that we had the vocabulary at all, cuz even for myself, like I just learned what how to regulate like within the last, I don't know, 6 months. Like I
Right.
understood what that meant just
Yes.
because
Yeah.
like yeah, and I was like, oh, but yeah, when I think back at all the times that she's ever gotten upset, I'm like, oh, like yeah, that's because I always thought that she was just trying to cope or deal with it. Like, oh no, but she needs to actually regulate in order to get there. But if she doesn't have the
Those
tool
skills.
set, yeah, or
Yeah.
the skills or anything, that she actually can't feel better no matter what we did because she has
Yeah.
to be able to do it for herself, which is different than like what I would do, which is different than like what someone else would do.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point in that sometimes we're expecting so much from people in terms of their self-regulation
Yeah.
and like it takes it's hard for us like I think of my daughter and she's
Hmm.
2 right now and I'm like very mindful that as an adult sometimes I can still have mini tantrums over things. So to give her that grace and that space to kind of figure it out is important.
Yeah, it's definitely yeah, it's yeah, tantrums and meltdowns are all I'm like thinking about the times when it was painful, but I'm like, you know what? I throw fits at home. My husband has to deal with those. I'm like, okay, like we are all guilty of like
Yeah. I have a lot of behavior around computers not working.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. So one of the things that you mentioned that you want to talk about, since we like to keep it open forum, which we've already like talked about a variety of things, but was sibling self care.
Yes, yeah. So I think that's something that is important to me just as a value, but also I'm right now pursuing a master's in counseling psychology. So it's become more and more of a focus for me of um, working on self care and teaching siblings self care from kind of a young age, um, and being able to support that part for them. That's that self regulation piece, I guess it's coming back to. Um, as I feel I was quite fortunate in having parents that did encourage that self care for me. So for me, that looks like getting quiet time. I'm a little
Mm.
bit of I would say I'm more introverted or um, as a person, and I need that quiet time. I need time with books. I
Mm.
need time by
Mhm.
myself, and I notice that if I have a lot of time where I'm, maybe with people a lot or doing a lot of things that are very social heavy, that will burn me out quite quickly. So
Mm.
that's something that as a child, my parents encouraged me, or they really encouraged a love of books for me. And that was always my safety whenever things were getting
Oh,
overwhelming,
yeah.
is that I could go and read. And even if it was somewhere like s- where my parents were trying to figure something out with my brother and it was somewhere out in the community. If I had a book, I could take that book out and that would distract me,
Oh,
right, from what was going
yeah.
on. And it was such a useful tool for me. It gave me so much safety and so much self care throughout my life.
Yeah.
And it's still a skill that I use. Like I notice if I'm getting stressed out, I'm like, "I need to read more,"
Oh,
You
yeah.
and what I love about it is, if you read, you don't, uh, look at other things, you can't. So if you're watching a movie, you can look at your
Yes.
phone now, right? Or you can be
Yep.
talking or doing other things, but books
Yeah.
kinda shut that out. So that was just my own kind of version of self-care, but it's unique for everybody, like what they, like to do, but I think it's important and valuable that siblings are encouraged to create and nurture that very important tool for them, because that's
Mhm.
what's going to help them when things get a bit overwhelming, and there's a lot going on.
Yeah, it's so good. There's so many there's so many good thoughts in there, and it's crazy because I didn't. So for me, I was thinking about like what my safe space was, like as you were sharing about like when you were like younger and you just like had your books, and I was like, the thing that I found safety in was like my stuffed animals, and I would just make worlds, and I would just use my imagination, have them like talk to each other. I would like have them just be
Yeah,
like little people,
yeah.
and it was, and it's this thing where like I didn't even realize that's like what I was doing. But
Mhm.
like as you're kind of describing like how you felt like when you're reading, I was like, oh, like yeah, like if I don't have them, I'm very like uptight. Like I know something
Right.
is wrong. Like I have to have like one of them because then I know like I feel safer like
Yeah,
when
oh,
I have them all.
totally. And it
Yeah.
was kind of like the safety of your imagination too, right? Of being creative and being able to kind of go into
Yeah.
that world, which is really important for a child.
Yeah. So that was definitely where I just felt safe because I was like, that's away from everything and everyone. Like I can just pretend whatever I want to be is real. Yeah, cause and then I think more recently, so as I've gotten older, so I mean I still have a lot of stuffed animals because I do feel better with them. So they're just like at
Yeah.
home. They're at home everywhere. Like I have like them in every room so that if I go into every room, I have one,
Yeah, that's the
just
same
to
with me
take
in
a
books.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so what I've also realized is that like, so I got into reading much more recently, but I also realized that I'm much more visual. So I like reading a lot of like graphic novels versus reading text, which I guess it just translates better in my brain because
Yeah.
I like to use my imagination and like picture it.
Yeah.
And so not only that, but like I listen to a lot of stuff. So what I'll do to regulate sometimes if I'm like if I can feel my heart rate like I'm just really stressed out, I will put on something like really educational and just listen to like a very long podcast about like space or like like learning about
Yeah.
like the ocean or like I really like behind the scenes stuff, so I'll like listen to people analyze music for like an
Yeah.
hour.
Yeah.
I'll just yeah, and I
Yeah.
always I used to wonder why I liked that stuff as a kid. Cause I
Mhm.
was like, or not a kid, just like growing up, in high school or whatever. Like I just thought, oh, I really like behind the scenes stuff. I'm like, oh no, like I like the like intricacy and like I like the
The
education part.
detail.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I would always feel better after. I'm like, oh, I've learned something and I feel better, so I should just. So I think that was I
Yeah.
found that was regulating as I got as obviously like access to the internet had increased at that point in time
Yeah.
versus like when I was a
Right,
little
there's so
old.
many more of those podcasts, and you can kind of
Yes.
find your tribe a little bit easier.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love all those podcasts that are like talking about books and breaking down themes and character
Yeah.
analysis. I'm like, oh yes, this is my jam.
Yeah.
I can listen to this all day.
Yeah, no, there. Yeah, it always. Yeah, I always learn so much, but yeah, it's a funny thing, like the love of learning, but in the format that you want, instead of
Yeah.
just oh, like I'm in school and now I have to like read these like books and stuff like that.
Yes, and that can make it not as fun for you to want to do outside of school. Yeah, I
Yeah.
did, my first degree was in English, and I chose it because I love to read, and then after
Mm.
3 years, I was like, "I do not wanna read a single book for, like, another 2 years." So it kinda had the opposite effect on me.
Oh no, I kind of did something similar. Not exactly, but so I really liked music and I played music for a long time, and so I was like, oh, I'm gonna get a degree and like produce music, and then like I did it, and I'm like, music is a hobby, cause I would be with the people who I was in school with, and like they were so
Yeah.
good, and I'm like, I don't like it that much. I just like,
Yeah, it's like I prefer to read what I'm not forced to read. Um,
yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
joined a really great book club, and it's perfect for me because it's about, reading whatever you want. So I could never, like, be in a book club where, you have to read like Middlemarch, right? And everyone has to read it.
Yeah.
But everyone just shows up and talks about what they're reading that month. And I love
Oh,
that because,
that's
yeah, you get to find
great.
out what everybody else is reading and get some book reviews, and then you get to talk about a fun book that you're reading into.
I was like, that sounds like such a great idea because then it gives you like the incentive and the accountability to actually read it, right? Because you have to like now talk to people about it instead of just like
Yeah,
not, just like, oh, someone else will just answer these questions or like talk about like, I don't have to like participate. But because everyone's reading something different, like you have a contribution to like to make to the larger group.
yeah, and it feels like you're getting more honest reviews of books as well from people because,
Yeah.
they're going to tell you if it's not great. They're going to be honest about it.
Yeah. Oh man, that's yeah. Hobbies are so fun. Does your brother have any hobbies that he? I mean, I guess he has his like topical things that he really likes. But is there anything he likes to go and do that's either related or not related to
He
those things?
does. He's so fun. We like a lot of the same things actually. He loves to go on drives. And like I we're Irish and I'm from Ireland, and driving through Ireland is really beautiful.
Mm.
So we like to, when I go home, we plan a lot of kind of road trips. He loves, he's a bit of a foodie, so
Oh,
he
that's
loves
cool.
to kind of go out and, we'll go get coffee and like cake at places, or we'll plan some nice meals to have. And he
Yeah.
loves to watch movies, and he loves listening to music. So
Okay.
there's a lot, and his music was honestly a lot better than mine when
Oh,
I
really?
was I was trying to figure out my music taste uh, when I was growing up, and a lot of like what was really big was like techno and trance and a lot of that type of music that wasn't really my vibe, but I was listening
Mhm.
to it because my friends were,
Oh, it's
and
popular. Like you can
it's
get it everywhere.
popular,
Like it's
yeah.
easy. Yeah.
But my brother was listening to like the Beatles and The Cure and Depeche Mode, and
Oh,
like, and then when I started getting into that music, I was like, oh,
yeah.
taking his CDs, you know. So he's a lot cooler than I am, to be honest.
Yeah. Oh, that's so fun. No, my sister, like, it's not that I don't know what kind of music she likes, but she's very particular about having music in certain environments. So like if she's in
Mhm.
a car, the radio has to be on and it has to play music. It can't be like talk radio.
Right.
So and she's very like, and it was so funny because when I'm with my parents, right, in the and we're all four in a car, she's very like vocal about the radio needing to be on, or if she doesn't like the song, she'll like, mandate to switch it, kind of things like that.
Yeah.
And it was
Fair.
and it yeah. And it was this thing that made me laugh though was, so my husband and I, this is before we got married, but so we drive my sister, I don't know where, and so she's in the back seat. She always sits behind the driver's seat. That's just like her spot in any car, regardless. So she either sits in the front seat or behind the driver, depending on how many people it is. And so we get in the car and she's like pointing to the radio, but like not, she can't like. I mean, sure, her motor skills are much better, but she couldn't point right. She's just like kind of her whole hand is like gesturing,
Yeah.
and I'm like looking at her, and I'm like, what the heck is she talking about, right? Because I've never seen her do that. And so my husband picked up like, oh, like, would you like me to turn on the radio? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, wait, what? I was like, and I so
Isn't that funny?
yeah, and I told my husband like after my sister had gone out, I was like, she was so nice. Like,
Yeah.
what is that? Right? And it was crazy because she had connected like, oh, like I can't just yell at him because he's not mom and dad and Charlene. But I was like, that it was so funny. But I was like, it.
It's interesting with a fresh perspective, right? Of like, especially when you
Yeah.
like, you grow up within a family and you do things a certain way. And
Mhm.
sometimes, like, I love that with somebody who's maybe supporting my brother in a different environment will tell me something, and I'm like, huh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I didn't see that. I haven't noticed that, and it's so nice to get that someone who's seeing your sibling from a different perspective and what they can see.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely like right now because my sister, so she just got into her housing, or not just got, she recently moved. I think in the what is it like the end like the fall of 2021. So
Oh
she's been
wow.
there. She kind of went through like her transitional period like with my parents, and then like trying to hire staff and like the whole thing. And
Mhm.
so I went to go visit her, and it was like the that was so strange at that time when I went, because I was like, to meet someone who like is learning the things that I've known for so long is such it's like an outside of body experience almost, because I'm like, oh wait, like,
Mhm.
oh yeah, like they have to know these things about her. And I felt very like uh I don't know. I was like, I was jealous a little bit because I was like, oh wait, like that's not fair. Like they get to like continue to be with her, and then they get to tell my parents, oh by the way, we're gonna do this stuff. I'm like, wait, but I've said that for so long. But I look for it. But then like as you're bringing up, I'm like, oh, but that's also like very early in her moving
Yeah.
versus like I think your brother's been in his housing situation for like a much longer period of time than like a year and a half.
Yeah, no,
Like,
he's had his own, he moved out about 20 years ago and um is very happily settled um in his home. Um but yeah, it's a interesting transition period. I do remember that because it's a big transition for you too as a sibling, and you
yeah, that
feel
does make me
almost like,
feel better
yeah,
that you said that.
yeah,
I was like,
yeah,
okay, there's hope at the end, because I was
yeah,
like, I was so afraid I'm gonna just feel like this forever, and I'm like, this is
yeah.
terrible.
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely. Yeah. No, it is
okay,
definitely a big transition at the beginning and a lot going on and a transition for everybody. And um, yeah, it's interesting, but very exciting as well to I remember feeling so excited for my brother because I had moved out the year before and I wanted that for him, and I
yeah,
felt like, oh, this is so cool for you. You get to, have your own space and, figure things out a little bit
yeah,
away from us.
yeah, that's a crazy thing too, because for so me and my sister, we moved basically at the same time. Like so I
Right.
had
Oh, that must
yeah.
have been a big transition for your parents.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I mean, I moved out because I got married, but I was still like 20-minute drive. Like
Yeah.
that's not the same thing as like, I mean, there that's its own thing. But yeah, when so she moved south like an hour and a half, 2-hour drive, and I moved north like a 10-hour drive. So and we moved like the same week
Oh my
to those
goodness.
things. So yeah, so my
Yeah.
parents did that. That was probably rough on that. But yeah, but that's why it's so funny, because when I talked to her like on video, it's like she's just like chilling. She's like on her sofa, super relaxed, just doing whatever she does. I was like, oh, like she's just. It's like I can see her settling into her own
Yeah.
space in her life, and I'm like, oh, like the projected future is like it's exciting because it's like, oh, she has her own. Right, she has her own room that's actually her own room, not just like, oh, it's a room like in our house. And she can like have her own stuff and like watch her own movies and like, yeah, like have her own life by
Yeah.
herself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think too, like, I can't speak for bigger families, but I know like in our family,
Hmm.
we were very like on top of stuff, of
Yes.
like, and you almost feel like, you have to like be like, oh, don't do this or don't do that or
Yep.
avoid
Yeah.
this
Yep.
environment and avoid that environment
Yep.
and it takes me a little while to unlearn kind of all of
Hmm.
those things and yeah, it's a big transition for everybody.
Yeah. It's crazy because I didn't even think about how that type of transition just affects siblings no matter what. Because I was just so caught up in like me moving and then me going through my own stuff in parallel to it that I kind of was like, oh yeah, even if I hadn't moved, like that's still a like I still would have felt something regardless of what it was, because it's just
Totally. It's
me,
significant.
yeah, like me and her being not in the same space at all and like not seeing it, or like it's just, yeah, it's just so weird. uh yeah, because there's just times where I just miss her because like I can't be with her because I
Mhm.
can't like call her on the phone. Because even when I Skype with her, it's so short just because it's just me asking her questions that she may or may not want to answer.
Yeah.
And then, but it's like, oh, but I can't. But if I was just in the room with her watching TV, like it wouldn't matter, right? Because it's like you're in the same space. So I just like I miss that part of being able just to like be together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I was like I live in a different country from my sibling now, which is like something I never thought I'd be able to do. I always thought I would have to,
Mhm.
be at home, and it's amazing what can be manageable. Like, but again, because he has such a great support team, and we're
Yeah.
very fortunate in a lot of ways. But I know whenever I'm home, and we're doing lots of fun things together, I'm almost like missing him while I'm still there because I'm like, you're so cool. And now it's gonna be like a couple of months before we'll be able to do all of these things together again. So very fortunate to have the WhatsApp and the FaceTime and all of those things.
Yes.
Um, there's nothing like some one-on-one time.
Yeah, and moving away is also something I would have never thought either because it's like just growing up, right? You're I it's crazy how much in your subconscious you just go, I'm just gonna live here forever.
Hmm.
Like because it's just I don't trust other people to take care of her. It's like what would I do, like how I would do with it, but once her housing situation got like solidified enough where I was like, okay, like that's where she's gonna be basically forever. I was like, oh, like I can leave now. Like it was such like a I had never yeah, I just never realized how much I was really tying my own life to not moving just because I knew that she had to be somewhere where I could feel okay not being within like, an hour drive or whatever and
Yeah.
be like I can move and I trust that I can like call the person who's in charge of her housing and like if something's wrong I'll get called or I can call them or whatever, right? And obviously my parents are still involved and stuff, but just in the long grander scheme of things like it's okay. I'm
Yeah.
not
Well,
there.
I think that's a big, piece of research about siblings is this extra responsibility that
Yeah.
siblings take on with or without, kids will do this even without parents knowing, right? Because
Yeah.
like little kids will just be like, I'm gonna, always take care of my sibling. And I think it goes back to like that self-care piece again of
Mm.
me kind of realizing actually how I'm going to be a good sister is by taking care of myself. And,
Yeah.
that part of like me taking care of myself and as much as I would love to uh, be able to be with him in Ireland, I have to be here right now and I need to be,
Yeah.
commit to that and then understand that, the time that we have together is going to be really memorable and great and wonderful and
Yeah.
building that relationship too across two countries of like we can still talk, we can still send each other emails, we can still like
Yeah.
he's got some great skills because of me living here. He learned how to write emails, he learned how to type,
Oh, that's so
all this kind of right.
cool.
So yeah,
Yeah.
so it's been like kind of beneficial for him. And for me too. It's been good for both of us.
Yeah, that's so interesting cuz due to like the pandemic, I think my sister she started to be like not more aware, but I guess she got used to like seeing people on screens. Because before we would do it, and she would just kind of like run up, squint in the camera because she can't see very well at this
Mhm.
time, and then she kind of like would wave and then like go away.
Yeah.
But I think due to like we always kind of just did it all the time, right? Because there were just family members that we couldn't see just because they had to stay like actually inside their house at all times, and so that was the only way that my sister was going to see anyone was just like if she would at least show up in like a camera. And it's like even when I talk to her, even though it's not that long, she'll like give me eye contact pretty much the whole time, which I think is pretty good for the fact that like I'm not in the room with her, but she's willing
Yeah.
to like look in the camera. So I'm excited to see like. yeah, like what the kind of the future holds for that, just like, yeah, like what she can learn, or what like the like kind of, oh hey, I can show her this thing because it's on camera and I can't like bring it with me when I go fly or drive to see her. Um but yeah, I'll, oh, now I remember my thoughts. Like I had something when you had sparked something in my brain and I lost it. But it came back, and part of it was that like having the time apart has made me realize like what I actually like to do,
Yeah.
instead of just, oh, I need to have this hobby because she can't go with me to do this other thing, so I have to like change my interests,
Yeah.
you know? So it's like, yeah, I think I've had more space to like try new things because it's like non-intrusive
Yeah.
to our life and living, like, you know, with my parents and whatever.
Yeah, totally. It gives you that time to explore. Yeah. Yeah, I think too, what I really like about, when we were talking about more neuro-friendly kind of environments, like
Mm-hmm.
in like movie theaters, and I remember going to some places like a museum or an exhibition, and thinking, oh, my brother would really love to be here, but he would
Yeah.
hate it because it's so busy.
Oh,
So
yeah.
now it feels like there's more opportunities because we can plan things around sensory friendly outings, which is
Yeah.
like in a way like enriching for both of us. We
Mm-hmm.
get to explore those things together too. So like there's things that I've learned to explore by myself, but also new things that I can explore and share with him, which is very
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah, it gives me lots of hope to like in
Yeah,
the like journey adventure of just being a sibling, because it's just, there's so many hard things that we deal with. I mean, the
hmm,
whole family deals with it, but like it's just very, I feel like it can also be very taxing on siblings just in its own right, because it's like, you know, they're also like little people too, right? Like your parents are trying to raise multiple kids, and it's, that's a challenge when they have like different things, but it's also like, you know, I like was a kid, but I had to help raise my sister, but like I did and didn't have a life at the same time, and there's so many uh challenges, but there's lots of obstacles to kind of
yeah,
overcome.
yes, yeah.
Uh
Yeah, I think too, like a lot of like early support around autism was more like parent directed or teacher directed.
yes,
Um,
I agree.
which, I'm a parent, and I get why that's needed. But what I've really enjoyed observing is just kind of the neurodiverse people sharing their experiences and advocating for their experiences and
Mhm.
advocating for their needs and environments. Um, and then I think too, like more research around siblings is starting to emerge, and we're
Mm.
getting a bit more like um, information about how siblings can be impacted by the environment not being set up for people with people who are different, right?
Yeah, cuz there's so many, yeah, there's so many like, they're not hacks, but they are, right? Hacks around like, oh, like, you know, we'll go to a carnival and I'm like, oh, I know that there's a bunch of kids screaming here, so I'm going to intentionally go the opposite direction because I know that my sister would then like throw a fit, or like, oh, like there's
Yeah,
food here, so we know that we have to avoid certain
right.
types of food or whatever, and it's like, but yeah,
Yeah,
but
you're
if there
you're
was,
constantly like modifying the environment a little bit to make it.
yeah,
It's yeah, yeah.
adjustable, but it's also like
Mhm.
it's crazy because it's like there's a certain level of that you can't avoid, right? But there's also a certain level of
Mhm.
it that you can, like, hey, we can make it conducive to being a little bit more yeah, like inclusive or just not as insane.
Totally. I
Yeah.
think a really big thing for me is when I got married back in 2013,
Mhm.
and we had like like a small enough wedding. It was like 100 people.
Yeah.
But I remember my brother was like, experiencing some more challenges back
Mhm.
then. And for us, we were really focused on ensuring that he could be there. First of all, it was very
Yes.
important to me that he was at my
Yes, me
wedding.
too. Me too. I yeah, yeah, I
Right?
agree.
And also that he would enjoy himself and enjoy his time.
Yeah.
So we spent a bit of time, like, just bringing him there, like, me and my fiancé at the time, we would bring him to
Oh,
the
okay.
venue and, like,
Yeah.
get coffee, and then we had a great setup where they gave us, like, this nice little nook, and, we had all of his
Oh.
things there, like his
Aw.
DVD player, he had, like, a weighted blanket,
Yeah.
he had all of the and just most importantly, it was quiet and it was available for him.
Yeah.
So, throughout the day, he would go in and out and in of that out of that, like, as much as he
Oh,
needed
that's so
to.
cool.
And it
Yeah.
was like yeah, it was the best day, and it was just for me, like, for him to be able to enjoy it and be happy at it was, like, hugely meaningful. So it's
Yeah.
like those are the things that, like, yeah, like, you kinda have to put a lot more thought into it as a sibling,
Yeah.
but also, like, you get this richness from that experience, right, that I don't know if other people would experience that,
Yeah, I
right?
think that's something as I've talked to more siblings, I think that's something that I'm starting now to appreciate more. Versus when I'm not with other siblings, and I think just there's a lot of stuff where or not stuff, but I think when I look back on like some of the stuff that like we did as a family growing up, I'm like, oh, like I wish we had done these things,
Hmm,
right? Which were like quote unquote more normal. Which that's its own thing. But
mhm,
I think now that yeah, just as I've gotten older and I've talked to more siblings, I think I'm realizing that like, it's we live a very unique life, and that's something that there's a lot of things that like would I'm pretty sure like my life trajectory would be very different had my sister not been diagnosed. Just like yeah, because there's just certain people that I would have never met or just had
yeah,
friendships with, and I was like, like, and that's something to be very appreciative of because it's like and there's a certain lens that I'll look through the world, and there's gonna be times where like a lot of people don't understand it and I can't explain it, which and in those times in real time it's very unfortunate because I'm like, okay, like I'm not gonna go through this energy, kind of like what I was saying earlier about like my
right.
coworker, and it's like whatever, but there's other times when I get someone who understands, like, or when I talk to Sibs or whatever, or even when I'm with my sister, I'm like, oh, like this, it's worth all of this other things that could be aggravating because it's like to see them grow and to learn just be humans and like kind of they trek through the world in their own life, and I'm like, you know what, like they're enjoying it, like that's I should also enjoy because they're enjoying it too.
Totally, and yeah, I mean, I think the older I've gotten and the more I've kind of, read about it and learned about it and reflected on my own experience, the more I'm like, it it's not my brother that was the problem, it was the environment, right? The
Mm,
environment was not supportive to him and,
yeah.
triggered him and was challenging for him, and honestly now as, we are kind of, uh, are proper adults, like, at
Yes.
this point, adult siblings together, he's, like, one of my easiest people in my life. He's
Mm.
so easy to hang out with, so easy to draw boundaries. It's so easy to say no to my autistic sibling because he's like, "Cool, I get it." He's not gonna, like, start drama with me or,
Oh yeah, he's gonna be like, okay, or like,
yeah,
or
yeah,
ask you why, but then
yeah.
you can tell him and give him a real explanation, and he'll be
Yes,
fine.
I'm never
Yeah.
gonna be like, "Oh, he's gonna be like, talking about me to a bunch of
Oh
people." Like,
yeah, yeah.
it's such, like a freeing relationship or, being able to go
Mm.
for a cup of coffee with him and being like, "I don't wanna talk, is that okay?" You know? So I feel very fortunate to have him.
Yeah. I'm gonna see my sister in a couple of months this year, so I'm excited because it'll be like the second time I see her like in her housing, and then my husband gets to come this time, because the other time I just went by myself. So I'm excited because that's something I've been wanting for a long time. And I mean, like we had planned all this stuff, and then the pandemic happened, so obviously like all of those things got thrown out the window. But
Yeah.
I've been really wanting just to spend like time with her away from my parents and then with my husband, because it's just like that's like the thing that continuously impresses me and blows my mind is like the relationship that my husband and my sister have with each other, because it's like I just like watching it because it fascinates me so much, because it's just like I like she's a very people person, but it's just, yeah, they have their own bond that like I love it, because it's like I never I would have never guessed that she had the capacity to do that
Yeah.
with a person that just wasn't me or my parents, right? And even then, like, I'm still her sister, so I'm sure like there's still stuff where she's like, yeah, like, you know.
That's
Yeah.
so great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like, it's so interesting, like, the different dynamics and, like,
Hmm.
how unique it is for every person.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, yeah, so many good things.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Was there anything else? I feel like we kind of like talked about writing. Was there anything else that you wanted to bring up or talk about?
No, I was thank you so much for having, like, such an open and honest conversation with me about our siblings. I really appreciate it, and I think it's really helpful for other siblings out there to just hear these conversations.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to like, yeah, just me talking to more sibs and more sibs listening to like to other people's perspective, because you just there's so many of us out there, like it's exciting.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
super exciting.
Yeah. So I guess to close us off, our last question is going to be: are there any words of encouragement that you would like to share with our fellow siblings listening out there?
Oh gosh. I guess I think things that have like helped me when my brother was struggling more is just thinking like one day at a time. And
Mm-hmm.
um words of encouragement could be, I've seen my brother really go through a lot, and come out the other end and be like a very calm and have some really great skills. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's a journey, right? So
Most
yeah,
definitely. Yeah. Cool.
cool.
Well, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Thanks for listening to the Special Needs Sibling Podcast. I hope you had a good time listening and feel encouraged in your own journey as a sibling to someone with special needs. If you liked this episode, please share it with your friends. And if you want to hear more stories, please subscribe to the show. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, the show can't happen without you. All special needs siblings have their own unique stories, challenges, family dynamics, and lots of life to talk about and explore. This podcast is here to let you know that you're not alone and that you matter. If you would like to be on the show or just chat off the record, please contact me. My info is in the show notes. Until next time, this is the Special Needs Sibling Podcast.